Toone has been shot secretary for the VSS for how long, John?
1987.
A long time. So we know all about charts and sequences. So for the next, how long have you got, John? 35 minutes. We'll talk about sequence files.
It'll take about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So let me get this. Right. So like I say, this is going to be quick, but it all depends on audience participation as to exactly how long. Because I'm going to go in at the end into the history of all the sequences. I've got about 200 of them, which are program stars. And you need to think about your favorite star, and I'll tell you the history of the sequences associated. So that's what we're going to do. Right, by way of an introduction, let's give everybody a. Oh God, sensitive, isn't it? Right. Let's give ourselves a pat on the back, shall we? We, BA, VSS, we've been involved in charts and sequences longer than anybody else. Harvard, AVSO, Hagen, we've been producing them much longer. We've also been doing them over a period of more than 120 years. And throughout that time, the sequences have evolved quite significantly. And we've been in the forefront of using the best photometry at the time throughout that period of time. Now, to give ourselves a second pat on the back, the VSS, unlike other organisations, we asked the visual observers to provide the light estimate along with their observation. And that's been absolutely critical because of the way sequences have evolved. And so with that, that allows us to create a database of data which is flexible, usable, and we can adapt it to a few things which I'm going to talk about. So first of all, the first bullet point there, with a sole organization, we can process and align long-term visual photometry within the database. Nobody else can do that in terms of long-term. All they can do is just simply add into the database observations as reported by the observer. The way we do it is we apply sequence files within the database. Now, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. The sequence files were part of the database development in the 1990s. I wrote a little bit about that in the, I think it was a March circular this year, a bit of background on how it happened. A lot of good work though done by the former Secretary Dave McAdam and other officers who helped him, and subsequently I think it was John Saxton and others who have worked on the sequence files subsequently. So since 2002, I'm saying that's 20 years ago. That's when we started a major overhaul of the charts and sequences within the VSS to align with, and at the same time, it was also happening with the AVSO. We collaborated with the AVSO to agree on moving to V sequences with certain conditions to make sure that they look right for the visual observer, because there are differences. And so we overhauled all our sequences, so the AVSO. So we're pretty much compatible now. We're using V photometry, which is good. That previously it was a bit haphazard. So we've updated all the sequences in line with V photometry. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to do some further work on those sequence files within the database. We're going to expand them. We're going to clean them up. We're going to further optimize them. So that's what I'm just going to explain a little bit more about now. So we weren't the first to kind of do a sequence file. This was kind of done by Father Hagen when he put together the Atlas Stellarum Velarum, starting in 1899, and he produced his variable star atlas. and it was in several volumes. It was a tremendous and painstaking project at the turn of the century, and what they produced some beautiful charts, but it just showed the stars. It didn't identify them in any form. What they did was give you a separate sheet which numbered the stars in terms of brightness, and they listed every single star on the chart as a comparison, and they numbered them. That's what the numbers here are. So the brightest star on the chart was number 1. The faintest one was number 55. This is Aurora Tor. You can see that there. Now, what we have on this particular chart is that this Atlas Stellarum was done visually. So this is visual photometry. It was done by grades. They were still doing grades in those days. This is 1908. And then they listed the catalogue magnitudes from the BD, and also what was available at that time was the Harvard photometry. So they listed out their estimate and brightness of each of the stars and compared it against 2 catalogue values. And the position of the star was in coordinates distant from the variable. So you got right ascension plus or minus, declination plus or minus here. So this is what you have. Now, one interesting thing to note here is that there's a divergence in the magnitude scale, and that's because Harvard used the correct scale, the Pogson scale, which was here. And what it means is that when you got down to the faintest, the 0 point was the same, about 8. But when you get down to magnitude, well, on the Hagen scale, it was 11.9 for the faintest comparison star. But if you look on the Harvard scale, it was 13.2. And that's a big discrepancy. And if you go back 120 years or so, you've got observers using the ASV, because there's no AA-VSO at this time, and there's other people using Harvard. And so you've got this massive disparity between 2 sequences across the board. And so you've got lots of data which has been produced, and because they didn't follow the sensible arrangement which we've got within the BAA, where we're recording the light estimate, they were just simply recording the magnitude. And so that's a big problem which needed correcting. There's a way around that, which we're going to try and help everybody else with. Just before that was happening, we were producing our own charts and sequences, and this is the sequence for Or Leo, produced by Markwick in 1907. There you are. Oh, I press the wrong button here. So 5th of June 1907. So this is the sequence for Or Leo. What he's done is he's got a choice. He can either go for ASV or he can go for Harvard. What does he do? He chooses the right option. He goes for Harvard, but he lists both. So he's listing the Harvard in the first column. He's using the ASV numbers. He's going for Harvard photometry. He's listing Hagen's photometry, and he's cross-referencing the Harvard lettered sequence number, because Harvard actually used letters originally before they adopted the magnitude with the decimal point omitted. So if you go back to Harvard photometry prior to 1906, they were using lettered sequences, rather like what we ended up doing. So the direction from Markwick to the observers is that where no magnitude is, so he chooses Harvard. He says where there's no Harvard College magnitude, then you can use the Hagen's magnitude, but you still must record the estimate so we can reduce it later on if needs be. So we're doing the right thing with the best photometry available, and we chose correctly at that time. I got to thank Markwick for that. So here's an existing sequence file within the database. So this is how it works at present. So you have, and it's slightly covered by the timing there, but we have, so okay, this is the latest sequence. This is the sequence which we have in the database. It doesn't show all of it. This is all around, and this is the brighter end of the sequence. So this is what we're using currently. This is what we've used in the past, and we've got 3 sequences shown in there. The previous sequence was this one, and these. So this is the designation in blue, and this is the magnitude in green. For 2 sequences, one which was Rod Lyon in 1981, John Isles in 1972, and then there's also an AAVSO one, but it's undated. So we've got those, we've got them aligned. A piece of good work there, whereby it's aligned with the current sequence. But the way it works, for re-reducing the data and double checking it, it can only work if we're using these comparison stars in the latest sequence. And as you see, there's lots of gaps because we've reduced the number of comparisons. You don't need the number of comparison stars which we've been using previously, and there's some good reasons for dropping some of them. We may find some of them variable, and again, I'll come on to that a little bit later. So it's not working because I think you've come out of, there we go, right. So this is what it appears, this is the data in the database. So this is the listing, this is the data table. So so you have the Julian date, you have the reduced magnitude as is reported by the observer, although you can adjust that within the database. You have the observer, these are the visual observations, these are the instruments, and yeah, there's no filter because you're visual. These are the charts. So these are the various charts which are being used. So we've got the AVSO chart, we've got 5301, which was the Lion chart, and we've got one here, which is the latest chart. And these are observations from about 20 years ago. That's probably been entered in a little bit later for some reason. But again, I've got all the data, you've got all the charts in here, producing the data, and what we have as an option within the database to recalculate the magnitude, which should come up next. Doesn't want to go for some reason. Are you overriding it?
Yeah, sometimes it needs a little bit of a prompt and then it'll start working.
Okay, again. All right. Okay, right. So we've done some great work with the sequence files, but there's more to be done. So that's the theme of this. So limitation is that we can only, as I've just explained, we can only recalculate the magnitude if it's using comparison stars present in the latest sequence. So that means we can't recalculate a lot of the data. A lot of the sequences within the current sequence files pre-1960 are not there. So we've only gone back so far. And some of those latest sequences do date from 1960, so they've never been updated from then. And that covers a lot of the Mira stars which were dropped in the 1970s. And also within the sequence file, we're not identifying what those comparison stars are. You have to go back to the chart to identify them. So they're not identified with catalog references or positional references. So, and also some errors have been discovered, which I'm just going to show a few errors when we recalculate the data. So take UBOO, for instance. This is, so you've got the original observer mags here, and so you can see some check. We need to do some cleansing on the database, by the way, because any data entered before 2000 is to 2 decimal points for visual mags. And that's why you have this clustering effect. So we need to clean that. Note what it's done here. It's clustered a lot of the data and suppressed it below I can't read the magnitude, but it's about 12, I think. The reason for that is this is the sequence file at the moment for UBOO, and it's a mismatch. Comparison C is matched with, in the previous sequence, it's matched with comparison E in the latest sequence. So the latest sequence has just been entered and it's not being married up against the previous sequences. So that's the effect on the recalculated magnitude. So we need to clean that up. And there's other examples of that. WCAS, look at this one. This is one star which was dropped. So you can see the data abruptly stopping, but some of it's restarted a little bit recently through Sean's enthusiasm. But look here, the magnitude, the maximum magnitude is about mag 8. Here it's gone up to 6, and there's some here which are naked eye, which just never happens. So again, the problem, and this is a close-up of the recalculated mags. So all this is wrong. These are probably accurate here, but that's wrong. So there's something really weird going on. And the answer to that is that we have got a problem within the main sequence. The main sequence includes both capital and lowercase letters. Database does not differentiate between them. And so it automatically goes to the first one, I think. And so if you have something using comparison star lowercase a at 9.4, it's recalculated as 7.1. So there's an error there. So when you look at these, some of these light curves, you have problems. So AB DRAC, again, we've got a sequence which is incorrectly married up. So you've got comparison star D matched with B and F with G, and it has it distorts the when you do the recalculation, it distorts the light curve. Same with AHR. That's another example. Latest sequence is this one, and you have comparison star A matched up with comparison star C, 12.6 versus 11.7. You never see. I've never seen AHR much above. I don't think I've seen it brighter than 11, but it's up at magnitude 9 here. So problems there that needs to be resolved. Same with SU Ursa Majoris. There's some matching issues there. Also, we need to do some cleansing. We don't need these comparison stars. 5.7 on SU Ursa Majoris. Well, I would hope we don't need it in the future. We've got a problem. So this is an improvement plan. It's already underway. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a recalculation column, which is not linked to the latest sequence. It is the same latest sequence, but it's going to fill in for all the stars. So we're going to do a separate column for that, and so we can give a recalculation value for all the comparison stars used on all the sequences which have been used. So we can recalculate all the data which has been used for those sequences. We will also add in, we will also identify the comparison stars, so people understand what these stars are without having to reference the chart. So we're going to identify them with using common star catalog references, and I've chosen the shortest version catalogs which I can find. I don't like these really long catalog values. It uses up too much space in the database. And you'll see that shortly in some examples. I've got a chart. I've got the chart archives. There's massive. I've got 3 cabinets full of just legacy charts, and I'm going through them systematically. And we're going to put all the sequences into the database. What I will also add, and this will help out our colleagues and people worldwide, is I will add in the legacy ASV sequences, which are using a different magnitude scale from those dates, 1899 to 1941, and also the AVSO legacy sequences up to about 1990. I can't, because they're dated. They're physically dated, so we know which chart they are. The latest AVSO sequences are not dated, and they do change. The references change every time you print them out. But the good thing is with those is that they're using modern photometry, so they should marry up with modern data. So there's not much I can do about those, but I don't think it's significant. And so this is, I'm working on Excel spreadsheets at the moment. We were looking earlier on at the example being or and. It had 4 sequences in it. You're going to have 11 sequences in the new sequence file. And basically what we're going to do is you're going to have the reference, star reference here. So starting off with 32 and, we've got some Henry Draper HD references, which are quite short, guide star catalog references here. So you can go into sort of planetary software, and you can click on these stars, you can find the data on them. And so you know which comparison star we're talking about here. What I've also included is where we've got Vmags and B minus Vmag accurate data. I'm putting those in there so we can compare them against a recalculated value, which will be largely in line with the Vmags, but it could be rounded out plus or minus depending upon the color. So it actually helps the visual observer in terms of how it appears. So this will give us our best possible recalculation value for visual data. And then across the top, here's the sequences. And I'm going to do them in date order, starting off with the ASV sequence from 1899, right through to the latest sequence here. And you can see in here, there's a lot of, when you get to Markwitz's sequence in 1906, look at the number of comparison stars. And we don't need that number of comparison stars. This is all that we need. So that's what it's going to look like. And I've worked through over 200 of these so far. There's still more to come. But so this is what we're expecting, is that we're going to eliminate the errors, some of the errors which I've highlighted, which currently persist within the sequence files. We're going to recalculate. We have the ability to recalculate all the data, which will be aligned with modern V photometry, and so that's what we've got going forwards. So we have the ability to whatever. When all the visual observers have died, and it's only photometry in the future, you can do a comparison of the visual data, which we have in our database, going back right to 0, and it will align with whatever is happening in several years in the future. So that's what we're trying to do here. So obviously, with the greater number of sequences and the ability to recalculate all comparison stars, whether they're variable or not, because we'll do an assumed value for it. We'll be able to do a lot more. We'll be able to recalculate a lot more data. But the other thing is, which will also be advantageous, is that we can directly compare or with other non-recalculated data who've used the legacy AVSO and ASV sequences. So all that we need to do is just cut and paste, say, AVSO here, and put it in the recalculated value there, and then we could recalculate all our data aligned with that, and we can check that whatever the AVSO observed in the 1920s, and they claimed that that was the brightest or the faintest this Mira star ever was, we can say, we can check it, and we can tell them whether they're right or not on their own data. So that's where we're trying to go. So that is the presentation. Hang on, here we go. Right. So oh no, we need to give some credit here. Bob's helping with this. Andy's the brains behind it all. And I'm working on the sequence files right now in preparation for this. And so I've done over 200 draft sequence files. I've worked on the Mira stars first, and I'm expecting to at least double that by the time I've finished. We're targeting completion in 2025. Now, before I finish, could we go to the other folder? I'm going to ask, well, no, what we'll do, we'll go first. Could we go to WCAS? Because that was one of the sequences which was all mismatched. And we only had 2 sequences on there. There was lowercase and uppercase letters, and it was all crazy. If we could go to WCAS.
Fat finger syndrome will be there in a moment.
Yeah, so is that it? Yeah, that's it. Right, okay, so this is what we've got now. So this is the new sequence file. Yes, it's got upper. Where is it? Here it is. Right. So you got you got your. Yeah, it doesn't show all of it, but you could scroll down and show the rest of it. So there we go. You've got the A's and the B's and the C's and so we got something like 50 comparison stars there. They're all aligned up, and we've got new recalculated values for them. If you could just scroll down a moment, if you look at the AVSO one, which is these two columns here, look here, it was 12.1 and 12.8. We were aligning with that. That's good, but look, it should really be 12.7 and 13.7. That's what modern photometry gives us. So we're going to be correcting that. AVSO can't correct their data. We can correct ours, and we can tell, and we can show them how it compares. So that's WCAS. Anybody got a favorite star? Myra star, or even you, Jem? Or I've done the. You want to look at the future sequence file because, sorry. No, not done that one yet. That's not not done that yet. No, I'm doing the ASV stars first. So yeah, you could do SSIG and you could TS and Majoris. I think that Sean was really enthusiastic about that, weren't you? TCFI, yeah. Could we do TCF? Yeah, we could do TCF. That was dropped. So we've only recently, we did a chart on that about 5 years ago. So that's TCF. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah. So there we go. Latest chart is on the right. So these are so what we start with. We've got the ASV series. I think it's series 1. So so that's from 1899. We've got Mark Wick's sequence in 1906. He revised it in 1907 twice. Brook revised it in 1910. AVSL produced their first chart in 1921. Scroll to the right. We updated our chart by Andrews in 1961. Then updated by John Iles in 1972, just prior to it being dropped in 1974. And then we updated the sequence because it was reintroduced. We put a new sequence in. But there's the new comparison stars. So again, how many comparison stars were there at the bottom of that? Can you scroll down? So there was more. There was about 42 comparison stars there, and we're probably using about 10. So that's been revised. So this gives you an indication of what's to come. Am I out of time?
No, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. What else do you want to look at for the future or the past?
I thought I heard someone shout at SSIG earlier.
SSIG then, go for SSIG. Yeah, I think that's done. I've done that one. I've done the hardest ones first because they've got the most comparison stars. Should get easier. Yeah. As the enthusiasm wanes, it should get shorter. yeah. So SSIG. So here we go. We start with the SV sequence. Oh, that's number 6. So that's about 1908, I think. And then there was a supplement. Just scroll down to the supplement. I want to show you something. There we go. Stop. So in the original ASV, comparison star number 75 was 11.4. In 1922, they'd realised they'd chosen the wrong magnitude scale. They'd not done Pogson scale. So they corrected it, and that's why they produced a supplement in 1922. So the 11.4 became 12.8. So anyway, we're including that in the database. And so we were sensible. We adopted in this sequence here the Harvard scale magnitudes, which still got a bit ropey further down, but they were much closer to what we've got today. So across to the right, we could go back up to the top as well. Let's see what we got. So Mark Wick did a sequence in 1923, just before he died. AVSO did their sequence in 1936. Still got the blueprint for that. Andrews did his in 1960. But again, that was the last time we did one. for a while. And then this one was done by Rod Lyon in 1981, I think. And that's still the present sequence. So that's S-sig. Any of us? Chi-sig, yeah, Chi-sig. You won't believe this. There's 140 comparison stars. Sorry, am I blocking? This one, it kept me busy for a week. So, and it's still in progress. That's why I've highlighted it, because I've not done the recalculated magnitudes yet. So I'm still working on that one. But if you go to the top, let's just look at the history of this one. So we start with Mark Wick's 1900 sequence, which preceded the issue of the ASV. Then he updated it, and he was adopting their references, because previously he adopted the Harvard lettered references. And then there was 2 series of ASV, which this was the second series. So that one did the brighter comparison stars. This one did the fainter ones. And then we had a supplement which updated it. AVSO did their chart in 1930. We updated it in 1961. I don't know what the other updates we got. We updated it in 1972 as well. We updated it in 1981, Rod Lyon. And then I updated it in, I'm not sure when. It would have been 2010, something like that. But we've got currently about 26 comparison stars. Could you just go down to the bottom? So find the bottom of the, here we go. Right, so here we go, where we are, 146 comparison stars. I'm sure we never used anything like that, but they're in the sequences. So we're going to include those. So Chi Cygnus, am I up, or does anybody have any questions? I just wanted to, yeah.
Just to get it clear in my mind, when I do variable star observations late at night, I still use the latest charts that are there. I don't need to start worrying.
No. Use your chart. In fact, the way it will work, if you're using Andrew's chart from 1960 with this new sequence file, it will correct it. But you're better off using the latest chart, because it's got the latest photometry. It's linear, and also the comparison stars are specially selected to be reliable, and for a visual observer to use. So over time we've got better at producing sequences because our knowledge has grown about how we deal with position angle and all these other things which creep into as errors into visual photometry. Best using the latest sequence. I would also advocate, if you've got it, my preference is that if you could use a BAA chart, then it's recognized and we can reprocess the data. If you're using a current AAVSO chart, then whilst it will align with the latest data and the recalculated values which we'll use for as a default, we won't be able to recalculate it to compare with legacy data. So if you have a choice and you don't mind, use the BAA sequence. If you don't like the charts which I produce, and you prefer the AVSO chart plotter, just plot it without the comparison stars and mark the BAA sequence on it. And that'll give you, whether you've got a reverse view or whether you've got the right field of view for you. And if you could mark on it the BAA sequence and report it as the BAA sequence, that's great. And AVSO will accept that. They accept any data, any sequence. So it won't affect if you're sending it off to the AVSO. So that's just a recommendation. It will help us. It will make your data more usable in the long term. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. You do. And I'm only producing sequence files for where we've got data and where we produce charts, so that we can process things. I won't be doing the job for the Americans. Yeah, Bill.
So, how sure can you be that the comparisons you end up with are actually not variable? Obviously, if they're very red, you probably wouldn't track them there.
Yeah, well, we're trying to avoid red stars. Yeah, yeah. Well, we're using modern V photometry. We're using a lot of what's been produced by Hendon and others. We're using Tycho, and so we're using good photometry. So we've got a level of confidence there that they're the right values to use. So there is a sense check when we produce the new sequences. Now, what we also do is we go through producing the recalculated value. We do a sense check there as well, and we do have to accept there may be some errors there because some of them are variable comparison. They've now been discovered to be variable, so we have to take an assumed value for that. But we put that in as a calculated value, so we don't lose the data. Yes.
There's an issue I've come across with clips and diaries is that after the clips you see two stars, you see the colour of two stars. During the clips you see the colour of one star. Sometimes the comparisons that you use after the clips are not right comparisons to use during the eclipse.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you take that into account at all.
You can't, no, you can't do that with the sequence. The sequence is the sequence. You have to take that into account in interpretation of the light curve. Well, because the discrepancies, if you're observing, if you look at the light curves, we've seen some of them today. You see V data, and you see visual data, and you see a gap. You see a step difference. And the reason for that is that the comparison stars are a different color to the variable often, and so then they don't align with V. So the V value for the comparison star makes it look different. So you've got that discrepancy. And depending upon whether it's blue or red, the higher B minus V or lower B minus V will determine whether visual data is brighter or fainter than the variable. And you'll see that on all the light curves. There's not much you can do about that. In fact, it's quite useful to have that information, because I remember on one of my light curves, when T-core ball was going into high active state, there was a systematic difference between V values and my data, and it was a 0.4 of a magnitude difference. When it went into high state, that disappeared, and that's because of the change in the color of the variable. It went more blue. So it matched the color of the variable matched the color of the comparison star, so the discrepancy disappeared. So you've got to interpret it with the light curve. You can't do anything much with the sequences, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Good. And I think we should thank you, John, for his work.
Oh.
He's doing the